Hey, I need you to hear me because poetry, it's my therapy. It's the cage that takes what I can't see and names it, tames it, then places it somewhere where it's safe for me to face it. But at its best, my poetry breaks free. It reaches under my arms and with curled over talons, it catches me, leaves me legs dangling over a ravine abyss, carries me into weightlessness. And I'm too blown by the scenery to notice there's nothing beneath me. It's in this moment of poetry that I become free and make the transition from facing my fears into total fearlessness. See, my words are simple because I need you to understand me. And my eyes are meeting yours right now because I need to reach out to you. And my hands might be busy holding this microphone, but I'm not altogether crazy. See, if we were meant to be alone in this world, there wouldn't be words like delicious or sympathy. The rules of our language would be carved in stone, and I couldn't use phrases like blown by the scenery because you'd think there were bombs involved and then you'd become frightened for me. Instead, we mutually buckle imaginary seatbelts and reflect on words like inspired and gratitude, so that with pens or with ears and eyes together, we can journey. Welcome to a sneak peek episode of Culture in Maine. I'm Carla Christopher, York's 4th Poet Laureate, and a huge advocate and believer for the arts in the York County area. So we're going to have an incredible episode this week with not one, not two, but 3 poets, artists, and musicians that are going to be joining us, sharing their work, sharing what they do, why and how, and really getting behind the scenes for some of the incredible things that you can find here in this area. Now, our first act joining us today is going to be These Seeds, which is an amazing poetry fusion electronic music experiment that has a brand new CD coming out. But before we talk to Bobby and Dustin, I'd love for you to get the chance to hear them. These Seeds.
Mechanized, desensitized and weird. bodies follow. They just sit there as I sit. They distracted condition contracted by the lack of action and crafted from the passive passion and promise. The undead harnessed like disease and warfare, carnage, and we sit there as I sit. But this riff is for the living, the half-dead, sitting in a circus. They seem so fitting, but some things missing. Some piece of someone fell apart somewhere. Heartache, rhythmic convulsion, parted and pulsing, always mistakes the dark intrinsic carvings as safe instead of starving. Antonym for the wicked barking, marketing the meaning of heartstrings, their lack of spark and harmony that brings you back to starting over. Pass over, because the blood has marked my mantle, and my innocence is stained by the tragedy of travels that dazed more than dazzled. So I sit here as you sit, baffled at the tasks yet to tackle, the fuel for the ember's last crackle, just a black fire pit that tires of being lit next to the last tabernacle of God. A cold place to make light. Have we won or lost the fight? A picture shot in still frame claims to save the dark of night, until we make right. The phase and case of still minds and stage fright. They just sit there as I sit. A distracted condition contracted by the lack of action, crafted from the passive passion and promise.
So These Seeds is a totally independent band that actually in just 3 months put together their own CD of all original music. Now it's available right now on their website, which is theseeds.bandcamp.com. But I actually have the member of these seeds here to talk to us and tell us a little bit more about what they do, why, and how. So I would like you guys to meet them. Now, we split it up. You guys don't do all the same things. So why don't you tell me, who are you and what exactly do you do for these seeds?
Well, I'm Dustin Nispel. I write the lyrical content, and on occasion I also play the djembe, the didgeridoo, the Indian flute. But the way I write for these seeds is, I'm a spoken word poet / slam poet, and we wanted to really build, the poetry aspect with the ambient music that builds as the same as kind of like a whole unison of epic proportions. We wanted to bring we really wanted to bring poetry home. We feel like the ambient music really allows an individual to connect with that emotional feeling of the poetry. When you hear poetry, you feel a certain way. It makes you feel an emotion.
Right.
As does ambient music, because you get lost into that drony kind of almost as in a meditative state. So if you combine the two, it really can bring out quite a powerful emotion.
So you picked ambient music specifically because you wanted that to work with the poetry to create a whole emotional experience.
Correct.
And you think that combining the poetry and the music is more than what they would be on their own?
Yeah, I would say so. I feel like, we both bring an equation together that, the desired effect that we each have on, both of our projects, him constructing the music and me writing the lyrics. We work really well together. I've known Bobby since we were in second grade together, so we have a lot of history together as well.
Wow. So you're Bobby, you're the music man.
Yeah, I guess pretty much. I think my name is Bobby Yagodich. I play the keyboard and I do all the sampling and all that kind of stuff and do all the laptop fun stuff and electronic stuff. And I guess for what I think it comes to with the ambient music and the poetry, the reason I think it kind of works is because I don't know, the way I look at it, I guess, with the ambient music, that kind of stuff, it's not so much structured as much as kind of like a free-flowing kind of thing. Okay. And I think it really goes good with the poetry, because I know with some poetry there's kind of structure and stuff to it, but when you're thinking about writing the whole thing, you're not thinking about like a verse, chorus, verse, kind of repeating stuff back and forth. So I think just like the straightforward sort of like the narrative aspect of the poetry really lends itself well to the ambient music, because the ambient music itself creates like kind of an atmosphere, to put you in a kind of mood in the first place. And then I think like that's why the narrative aspect of the poetry kind of brings in the mood all together, and brings a full circle. So
did you create ambient music on its own before you hooked up with Dustin?
Yeah, before I did it, but I started these seeds thing probably like, I guess 2007. No, not 2007. Like 2 years ago. That was way off. Right at the end of, right at the beginning of 2011, I pretty much started this. And that was just, I play in all kinds of other bands that do like the instrumental kind of music and stuff. So I just wanted to do a more somber, kind of slowed down version of everything with the more ambient kind of music, with just drifty atmosphere and stuff like that. And I just thought, and I started playing with him and DNA in the Primary Cell, which was another band that we used to play in, which did the whole electronic poetry kind of thing. And then we met through that. And then we just started doing stuff together. And like I said, I really thought the way his poetry, I really wanted something else. Like, I like the ambient music, but I really thought there was something else that needed just something brought to the foreground, because that's the whole thing kind of with like the ambient music. A lot of people kind of think it's just its background music, kind of thing. So I thought there wanted to be some sort of element to bring it to the forefront, you know what I mean? Kind of make it thicker and denser, the sound.
So when we can layer your sounds, but we can put the poetry, put the front man on it, create a whole concert experience. So how do people respond in public when you are bringing ambient music and trancey poetry? I mean, what's the audience for that? Is it music fans? Is it poetry fans? Is it both?
It's both.
I think it's everybody.
The reception is both. People like it,
anybody
no matter what.
Who likes to feel emotion. If you're into drama television or drama movies, you're clearly into that genre because that movie makes you feel a certain way. You like to feel that emotional aspect of that movie.
So how do audiences respond when they come and hear you for the first time? Are they expecting what they get?
I don't think so. I don't think so. We did a pretty cool show out at the Readers Cafe not too long ago in Hanover, and that response was really great.
Yeah,
there was an open mic proceeding, post-show open mic after we had performed, and you could tell that just the emotion that, you know, our performance brought out in the other poets that were there when they got up and, you know, performed their pieces.
Energy feeding off energy kind of thing.
Yeah, it was a really high energy place, and, you know, anybody who, you know, can perceive things to create a desired emotional, or even if they're not even desiring it, you know, if it's just something that you know, connects with them, and whether it be they connect with the music or they connect with their own thoughts or something, you know, we act as like a trigger for those emotions in this project.
So do you tend to have certain themes that you write about, stuff that comes up that's calculated to get an emotional response?
Well, I think a lot of it just happens. We play off each other a lot. When, I mean, if he's doing like if it's a darker piece, I'm going to put, you know, darker music kind of. I mean, whether his, you know, words might dictate how I play, and my playing might dictate the kind of stuff he says. Because like I said, a lot of our, you know, there's not a lot of premeditated stuff when it comes into the writing. It's just we sit down and he's like, "Hey, I got a new piece." I'm like, or I have a few, you know, things to play on the piano that sound cool. And it just goes from there.
So you'll go back and forth. You'll start with some music, and he'll just write a poem that goes with it.
Yeah, a lot of times it just comes just jamming, or like I said, he might have a whole piece written or something, and he'll come and he'll read it, and I'll, you know, think about it and get a kind of feel for it, and then we'll do it again and just jam through it and just build from there. And so far, there hasn't been a song that we really ditched. We just used them all, you know. Like I said, we recorded the CD as we did it. Originally, it was only supposed to be, 7 songs, and we kept writing another song. We're like,
it was supposed to be an EP. It was supposed to be like a 4-song EP, and then, you know,
it just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And we just recorded them as we wrote them, and it just came out really well.
So how many tracks are on the new CD?
9 overall.
9 overall tracks. And this piece that we actually heard today is a brand new track. It's not even on the CD yet.
Yeah, actually, this is the first audience to ever hear this piece. You know, everybody in the studio and the audience out there.
Wow, so when is the second CD coming out?
Everyone asks that question. We could put one out in like 2 months, but we're not going to do that. We want to really promote this this album, The Isle of Mare, which is available at theseeds.bandcamp.com. Or if you make it out to one of our shows, which, you know, and by the time this is aired tonight, you know,
we'll probably have another
we'll be doing a show in Harrisburg Makespace. You know,
yeah, we're playing down in Harrisburg tonight at a place called the Makespace, which is like a row home converted into like a DIY kind of venue, art space kind of thing. So it'll be pretty cool.
What other shows do you have coming up? What are some of the places that you guys play around here?
Well,
we play a lot of different kind of stuff. You know, from show kind of with other bands, and we also play like the poetry kind of events where we're featuring other people do poetry and stuff like that. Yeah, we play in art galleries and stuff like that.
We got one coming up February 13th. That's at the Westminster Station in Maryland. It's also a poetry open mic proceeding that starts at 8:30. And we'll probably be playing about an hour and a half or so out there. It's a pretty great venue, great coffee. You know, I love coffee.
That's key. That's key.
Oh yeah. Then we got March 15th. We have another show at King's Courtyard, which is hosted by.
What an incredible place, King's Courtyard Art Collective, which just might happen to be, I don't know, 124 East King Street, maybe. 7:30 p.m.
Yes.
That's going to be a great show.
That is going to be a great show. We're really excited to do that.
Definitely going to have CDs and stuff for that one too.
Yep, we'll have CDs. Hopefully we'll have some T-shirts.
Well, we always have new stuff. It's all about, like, I think that kind of goes with the aspect of us always kind of writing stuff. That's, for me, it kind of is just all about forward motion, kind of just progress going forward, you know what I mean? Not so much just, you know, sitting, writing something cool and just sitting where we're at and going with it. Like, we want to keep playing on it. This isn't with the CD. It's not like a kind of deal where I want to say, we took all this time to write and record the CD, so we might as well put on, because we really didn't. It took like 3 months to do everything. So, I mean, in that time it took, we could take double that time and write 2 more CDs. But
okay, so be honest. When you're playing, how much of that is actually pre-written, and how much are you just going off the moment, making up as you go?
Well, I think with a lot of it, but for me, at least for all the songs, for me, there's kind of, it's not so much like a structured kind of like, I know exactly how each part's going to go. It's just, for me, there's just a feel of the song, and you just kind of feel it out, and it just goes with itself. Like, that's why I think there's a kind of like a cool free-form aspect to it that goes well with the poetry, you know what I mean? Because there's, with the structure, like, I don't know. I like the aspect of just going with a song and going forward with it. I mean, just trailing through a song as opposed to going back and forth. Like, okay, the chorus is over, go back to the verse. Okay, the verse is over, go back to the chorus. I like thinking just going for it. You know what I mean? When you read a book, you don't go back and forth, you don't flip back pages. You know what I mean? That's what I like about the narrative aspect of it. So it's just he pretty much just telling it, and you're just there for the ride.
Yeah, and even even in the poetry aspect of it, with him, with ambient music, I could switch up any of the words that I want to, and nobody will ever know. We can perform. True. We do shows, and not every piece that we do is this.
It's not going to be the same. And all that kind of stuff.
Because we switch it up. Like our title track, "The Isle of Mare," is 11 minutes and 30 seconds on the CD. But when we do it live, it's over 12 minutes. Because we add whatever we're feeling. If I feel like things need to be added, or if he feels like things need to be added, or if we want to cut it short, or draw it out, we do that, and we don't even really have to talk about it. I just know if he's going on, and he knows if I'm going on. We roll with it.
Well, now I've noticed some of the lyrics do tend to be a little dark or politically challenging.
Yeah.
Where do you get your inspiration from? What makes you decide what you're going to write about?
I write from the heart and from my experiences. I feel like we're in some really dark times as humans and humankinds on this place that we're in, and I use it as a vent more so I'm not walking around with those questions and those emotions like stuck inside, if you will. It's dark, and but we all have dark places that we go to in our quiet moments of thought, that not too many people know. A lot of people don't know about it, but it's a way for me of coping with it versus, like drinking or drugs or anything like that. I focus on using darkness to make light. And between using these dark lyrics and these dark aspects of poetry, people can connect, because those types of things aren't really talked about in that sort of manner like that in your face, and you have no choice but to listen to it. So you recognize it, and it makes you think. It's like flipping switches. If somebody talks about something that might register with somebody else, they're going to be like, wait a minute, okay, well, I'm going to start looking into that, and it can all stem from there, and we want to really inspire. That's another thing that, we want to do. We want to inspire other artists to be creative. And
you taught us about creation and just, physical manifestations of how you feel.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Awesome. Well, our next artist is actually all about putting feeling, the same motivation that inspires these seeds, and encouraging people to use that motivation to create things, whether it's poetry, dance, or artwork. So I would love for you to meet artist, community activist, and the person behind the incredible artwork that's on my set today, DeJuliis. Now, if you've been walking around on East King Street and seeing the incredible number of galleries and art spaces and collectives that are starting up there, the odds are you've seen this crazy window at the end full of flower-covered purses and ring-wearing mannequin hands and art that just jumps out of the window at you. And that is a space that belongs to DeJuliis. And hopefully by March, we'll actually be able to go in and visit it. But we get to visit with her today now and find out a little bit about what she is already doing in the community. Because no matter how much you think you might know, I guarantee you have no idea how much is going on with this woman. Christine, okay, just run down the list for me. I know you're teaching the community art classes at York Arts.
I do. I do that through Creative York, so I'm considered on the faculty at York Arts. It's been a wonderful, wonderful collaboration and partnership. They've been so supportive of me, yes.
Now you teach all kinds of different types of classes there. Like, what are some of the different types of classes and activities you do there?
I've changed it up over the years. I think this is the third year that I've participated in the program. I've done poetry workshops. I do one on making mandalas. I do one on expressive drawing and painting. I have done one on making personal shrines, and perhaps there'll be something new coming down the line. The new Creative York catalog comes out for spring, summer soon. So I actually have a deadline, so I need to decide what I'm going to be doing, but whatever it is, it'll be hopefully fun and interesting and creative.
Okay, so where else are you teaching and doing projects? Because I know I've seen you at King's Courtyard too.
Well, I am a King's Courtyard collective artist member. So there's 8 of us currently, with a potential 9th person getting ready to join us. So we are growing. I just love being part of that whole community there. It really has become a community for me. From there, I haven't taught any classes at the King's Courtyard collective yet, but that is something that we've had discussions about, trying to figure out logistically what might work in the space. However, back in 2010, 2011, I launched my own art program, which came about through my own personal experience and what I found helpful in dealing with some certain life issues. In 2009, my life it fell apart. That's what it felt like to me. So in deciding what pieces I wanted to pick back up and truly creating and understanding who I was and creating a life that felt meaningful for me, I decided to use my own experience and develop a program I call Art Without End. Which, and currently on exhibit at City Art, is an exhibit which is a culmination of the experience of 9 people plus myself who went through a year-long journey together, everything from poetry to language and word to expressive drawing and painting to mixed media to a lot of creative experimentation. So the show is representative of each person's unique experience. So it's very eclectic. It's a little bit different than, say, what I consider a typical gallery show. It's informational. This particular program involved the mental health community. So it does take on that certain aspect of being able to use the arts and creativity as a healing process.
So these are different people, this group of artists, they all spent a whole year working with you, learning how to use art to communicate and express.
Yes.
And then the end results of that are up on the walls of City Arts Gallery right now.
Correct. And it'll be up through February the 7th, I believe is the last day of the exhibit. It actually got extended.
Wow.
So you have an opportunity to go out and see it, and either on First Friday or during regular City Art Gallery hours, which you can either look up on the web or give York Arts a call. But yeah, that was an incredible experience. So it's something that I developed, facilitated, and also funded myself.
So you paid for that yourself?
I did. I believe that there was a need for it out there. I wasn't sure how it was even going to happen, but sort of magically, it just all of us. I wanted a group of people, and there they were. They showed up, and they were very committed to coming. We met monthly. In between the monthly get-togethers, they would have creative experiments and ideas. I provide lots of handouts for inspiration, and then what they were to do is to take what I present as guidance and to make it their own experience. I mean, that was the emphasis of it. I don't consider myself a teacher. If anything, I call myself the unteacher, because I'm trying to get people to kind of undo the things that society has placed on us and our thoughts about what art is about, or who's creative, or who's an artist, or who's not an artist, because I believe there is an artist in each of us, and that we can tap into that for all different reasons and all different purposes. For healing, we can become better parents, better friends. Arts, as far as cooking or writing, or the way that you just live your life is creative. So I believe it passes along to all aspects of life and then connects with other people.
Well, now, I've noticed in looking at your art that you take that approach even in the actual physical way your art's put together. There are all different kinds of materials. I mean, I found purses that had flowers hot glued on them, and I found, hats and couture clothing that you had repurposed and decorated, and even your paintings themselves. Now, some of these paintings we have on the wall here, I couldn't even begin to tell you what they're made out of. But I'm like, her hair is sparkling, it's glittering.
Like glitter.
Like how does that work? I mean, what do you actually make your art out of?
Well, it's found objects, things I have on hand. I'm on a pretty tight budget.
Right.
Often people donate things to me because they know that these are things that I seek out. Thrift shops, yard sales, you name it, I'll go there. And when I come up against a creative challenge, I try to figure out a creative solution.
It's not a problem. It's a creative challenge.
It is, yes.
Okay.
I try to avoid the word difficulty or problem. It's more of an opportunity and a challenge to think about using things in different ways. So the process it can be wide and varied, and I do like to delve into everything from jewelry making to using vintage items and what I call reimagining them and putting my own kind of flavor or flair in it. And my artwork is primarily inspired by people. I do what I do because of my love for humanity. I mean, that is the reason I get up in the morning, and I go about trying to connect and put something out there that feels valuable, and it's less about me than it is about the people who I feel I might be benefiting. But it is a wide variety of materials. Sometimes I use everything from speckle to, and I do like glitter, to other art mediums. Just whatever feels right. It is an intuitive process for me, and it's sort of evolved over the years. The earlier paintings are the more expressive ones that kind of have a lot of action going on, and those were actually based on archetypes, which are kind of what I consider universal essences or the spirit of something. It's not a stereotype, but an archetype, and they each have light and shadow attributes, which relating to what these seeds says, it's the same thing, taking the shadowy parts or the darker parts and bringing the light out in it. It's not a good, bad, right or wrong. It's not negative. There's benefits to both. So embracing the wholeness of something and making that, expressing that and trying to capture that emotion of it was important for me. It was sort of a way for me to come to understand my own self and to relate to other people, because there was a while there where I was quite afraid of people due to my own emotional issues and some mental health challenges, which provided the best opportunities for me. I mean, I love my life now more than I ever have, and I feel like I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
Do you think that you have to go through some of those things before you can teach and help others? Is that why you reach out to the mental health community now?
Well, to be honest, in 2009, when a lot of things fell apart, I didn't leave the house for about 1.5 years. So it took a lot of therapy to get to the point where I felt like I was well enough to be able to impact someone else's life, because it's true, you can't, for me it's true, and I can only say what's from my own experience, is that in order to help others, I needed to help myself first. So then the scary part came when I walked out that door and walked into the NAMI office, which is the National Alliance on Mental Illness. That was where I decided to start. Those were the people who were my peers, who I felt comfortable with. It was a safe environment for me. I had an idea. I wanted to start a collage class and offer to the consumers, which are the people who receive services, or even providers who might be interested, or family or support members for people who are in recovery from mental illness. They welcomed the idea. I hold it once a month on the last Thursday of the month from 12:30 to 2:30.
Okay.
It's flexible. People can stay a little longer if they like. I usually tend to just stay as long as someone's willing to sit there and
still
embrace.
At NAMI right now?
It has. We celebrated the 2-year anniversary October 2011.
So Fantasmagoria.
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 Opening in March, if not sooner, but the target is
so
March.
That's what we're looking at. We're hoping by March to be able to come in and take part in funding.
You can come peek in the window now.
I peek in the window all the time.
And if I'm there and you want to come in and take a look, please just tap on the window or knock on the door. I'd be happy to see you.
So what is one of the most moving experiences you've had where someone came back to you and told you about how one of your classes or a piece of art they got from you or a piece of art they created with you did for them? Has anyone ever given you a story like that?
Yeah, I get quite a few stories like that. and one of the other things that I do, it is creative related, because everything that I do, that's my life. I like my life to be consistent and be the same person wherever I go and wherever I happen to be. Through NAMI, I also give these talks called In Our Own Voice. And what I do is encourage people to come seek out an avenue that's a healthy way for them to add to their wellness. So some people call it personal medicine. So this relates to creativity and art being personal medicine. And I've received quite a few letters and notes or acknowledgments, or conversations over the phone where people tell me that when they come in the door, whatever it was that was weighing on their mind, whatever, thoughts that they were dealing with, that they were having some challenges with, when they come into the creative space, and this is why I call myself a facilitator, perhaps versus a teacher, is because I'm holding the space for them. I don't need to teach them anything. They've got it inside. What I'm bringing to them is an opportunity to just bring it out. And for them to come tell me when they come into that space and they're creating, it's a very mindful activity. And that's what's healing about it. And it actually helps bring about transformation for them. So and then they take it and they take it home. And they're continuing the process. And that's another thing. It's about the creative process itself, not always about the end result, which can be very satisfying, but that's not the emphasis. The emphasis is becoming totally immersed in that moment, in the present, being mindful, and just putting yourself into whatever it is that you're doing, and actually let it come through you, and be whatever it is, and be okay with that. So, and just for them to say that it's changed their life is just, I say, when I read these letters or these comments, I think to myself, if you don't hear that and read that and feel pretty darn good, then you're a hopeless cause.
There's nothing more. That's it. There's nothing I can do for you. I've tried.
It's myself. If I couldn't, I can't, what more rewarding thing could there be in life than to touch another human being's life in a positive way? And vice versa. I gain just as much from them as they do from me. I probably more. That's my riches. So, the funding would help.
Right.
And that's difficult. It's difficult trying to be an individual doing what typically a nonprofit would do.
Right.
Trying to do it, but it was something I had to do.
Like one of the nonprofit projects I know you work on is actually trying to get art supplies into classrooms, and you actually work with Dick Blick.
Right, it's Blick Art Materials, and what it does is actually that they have art room aid lists, and you can go on there and find just tons of worthwhile projects to support. But I'm going to throw a little plug in for my own.
Do.
So it's dickblick.com, and you look up art room aid list, and if you look up Art Without End with it, which is what I call my signature program, you can either make a financial contribution or you can actually purchase art supplies. And there's like a list on there of the supplies that are needed to be able to help. So for all these supplies that
you use and give for free in all your community projects, people can actually go to dickblick.com, look up Art Without End, and actually donate supplies or donate money for you to purchase the supplies so that you can have more of these things for the artists that you go in and help work with. So that I can do what I feel I want to do. That is incredibly creative.
I thought of another thing that I did.
What else did you do?
Well, I belong to a program. It's called the Community Support Program, also in the mental health community, and it's sort of a coalition of consumers, again, could be family members, just community members that feel that there's a need to educate and advocate for people with mental illness.
Wow.
And they are very art involved, and York College has been very supportive of what we do. And we have a candlelight vigil every year, and in conjunction with that, Bell Socialization Services has an annual art show. So Community Support Program from past projects has donated some leftover art materials to me, and my intention is to open some studio time for people who may not have access or to the materials or the space to be able to do it, or perhaps the support and the mentoring that might help them move along in that process, to come into what will be Royal Square Arts at 128 East King Street, to be able to prepare so that they could participate in that annual art show. So that's another project that is just getting underway now. So.
That is incredible. That is incredible. So if you have not made it to the East King Street block yet, there's no excuse. Between Parliament and King's Courtyard, checking out Christine's incredible space there, checking out what will soon be the coolest boutique in York, as well as a participating art space. I know I can't wait for it to open.
Yeah. And it's growing. There's, another place in between the King's Courtyard and my new space, which I'm going to keep connected to both. There is another philosophy collective will be opening there too. So it's a place, it's a destination now. It's a place for people to come.
I love it.
So.
And one of the poets who's a frequent member on the downtown York scene, he's actually York Art's main poetry host. And he does tons of incredible poetry events, including at City Arts, which is hosting Christine's art gallery right now. My next guest is poet, author, musician, Keith Baughman.
This first poem is called Jennifer in Green Frame. Like the streamside ring of daylilies, the loneliness of the widowed young mother is edible. She stands in the doorway with her accidental smile and awkward farm boots. A ghost fading into a ghost. A smoky willow leaning over a mirrored pond, tilting off-center, in the green doorway of a house of a mutual friend, talking of Ireland as a way of talking about her dead husband, serum weeping from cut roots, as she falls through the bottleneck of emotional amputation, her isolation, concealed in 3 small children with flooding, shipwrecked eyes. This is called Pink Flag. This town has been dead for generations. A diagonal sun casts corrugated shadows from the slumped roof lines. Here we find our work raveling the rusted intestines. Here, where we reassemble ourselves, our place of vision, so to speak. 2 kids following the train tracks like a dry stream bed pick up a pink umbrella left inside out by the wind. Taking turns, they wave it overhead, their vibrant, eviscerated flag. Another dream to collapse into another evening. I light another cigarette to prolong my vigil. The calculus of this place cascades over the ledge of observation. No one is entirely still or isolated. The death that comes is what daily divides us. This last one is a poem called Consonants that started a long project that I'm about 15 pieces into. So this is the first one, simply called Consonants. The consonants of rain that calms a convulsive river, like how a warm hand settles shuddering grief. A form of translation. The borrowed light of the moon gives it its lost look, its one stone face, eyeless, sober. Fluttering over us tonight, helicopters shuttle between the collapsed flow of the highway and the hospital. Their insipid music drowns the barking of a red fox dying hidden in the cornfield. In the periodic silence, I hear the plea weaken and cease. That's it.
Wow. Now, are these pieces that you've actually started working on recently as you've been putting together this new collection, or have you been writing for a lot longer than that?
The first two were older, which nowadays means about 2 years. And the last one, Consonants, was written just a few months ago. And I've always wanted to work on a large project, but never had the reason to. And this piece came out, and it was finished. It was clearly the way it was supposed to be, but I had no idea what it was about. And I looked at it for about a week or more, and finally one day it just sort of announced itself, what's going on. That there's a thread running through all the images that tie them together somehow. And so the concept of there being this consonance-type relationship between the elements announced itself. And then suddenly I realized, oh, I have the seed for this long project, which then I just dove into. And so in the past couple of months, I've, like I said, generated about 15 pieces of it so far. And
so what's the overall theme? What is it that you're trying to put together and express that you need a larger body of work to do as opposed to individual pieces simply existing on their own?
Well, just like the first piece where there are these seemingly unrelated elements that hold together by a thread, the project overall has a handful of seemingly unrelated elements that it's kind of the trick or the game is to get them to work together. So there's an element of being an orphan, and so the character of Telemachus gets into it, who is Odysseus' son, and there are elements of the road, traveling. I recently did a drive from Austin to here. It took about 3 or 4 days, and that got into the project. And as these elements start to appear and start to interact, part of the fun I'm having with it is creating a sense of location, but then a sense of dislocation. And that's not necessarily readily apparent, but it at least makes it interesting for me to try and work inside of.
So how important is it for you when you're writing? I know some of your word choices are more philosophical sounding or intellectual. The meaning might not leap out without taking the time to really sit and reflect on it, let it roll around in your mind, and let the images sort of grow up from that poem. So do you write thinking, okay, I've got to figure out a way to make other people get this? Or does it just come out the way that you want it to come out, and then you see if people get it or not?
The tradition that I follow doesn't explicitly address the audience. It's more of an internal activity, and therefore it becomes more of a spiritual activity. Okay. And so the effort is to get the poem right. I recently listened to a lecture by Robert Kelly, and he announces that the poem doesn't care what you think. The poem doesn't care if you understand it. What it wants is to have a conversation. Now, that doesn't mean you have license to do whatever you want and leave things unexplained, okay, but at least acknowledging the fact that this is part of a conversation. It's not complete. And that was one of the coolest things about starting this Consonants project, is I wasn't writing individual poems per se. I was writing parts of a larger piece. And so suddenly I was released or relieved of the duty of creating this fully packaged, understood piece of meaning on one page, i.e. the poem.
Right.
Instead, I was allowed to just write poetry. And I was encouraged also by a lecture with Robert Creeley when he talks about just being willing to go with somebody. He's obviously a big fan of Robert Duncan's work, and he has a philosophical and almost spiritual and even aesthetic disagreement with Robert Duncan at root. But at some point, he read something of Duncan's that spoke to him personally. And from that point on, he was willing to go with him. That doesn't mean that he understands everything, and he relieves himself of the need to understand everything. And when you do that, the poetry becomes alive and in a way that it normally wouldn't if you're trying to constantly understand it. It's a lot like abstract expressionist painting, not in the subjective, objective way, but it's a lot like that in terms of each person gets to experience the work of art however they do. And the work of art is strong enough to do that. And that's, again, articulates part of the tradition that I'm involved in. Now, as far as word choices go, the poem or poems or poetry dictate what words show up. I just have to make sure that in an editing capacity, whether or not they're appropriate.
So you would say that the conversation that you're having when you're creating a poem is more the conversation between you and the poem, you and the idea, as opposed to you and whoever's going to be reading that poem.
And if the poem is done correctly within that dynamic, then that conversation will carry over to whoever experiences it.
Speaking of the poetry community, you haven't just reemerged into it. You actually took over and are now the host and the curator and the talent booker for one of the longest running poetry events in the county. You actually run Poetry Spoken Here, which meets at City Arts every first Monday at 7 o'clock.
Mm-hmm. A little more than a year ago, I got the itch to get involved because it just seemed like, okay, it's time to crawl out of your cave. It's time to be human. And in some ways, I probably am going through some of the same process that Christine has gone through in terms of her interactions with the world, certainly by different means. So anyways, I showed up and I got involved and found out that, wow, people actually remembered back when I used to be involved, and that was, I hate to say it in this way because it's kind of a cliche, but it was heartwarming. Aww. And then when I started to go to readings and just check out, see what's going on, I was amazed at how much it had changed. Audiences were showing up in large numbers. People were listening. People were bringing good work of their own. And the environment had changed in the time that I walked away from it. And that immediately inspired me to make sure in every way I could that what we have now remains.
So what are some of the projects and the things that you've been doing to try to keep this flame burning, this interest in poetry, this passion for people to come out and share?
And we made September Local Poetry Month.
Yes.
And it was about as successful as we thought it would be. It was a trial run. And so that was one of the things that I initiated with your help. And it's funny because these things are floating around and we're all having these individual conversations, and I've started to realize that we're all having the same conversation. Mm-hmm. Back when I was originally organizing, York was sort of like the poetry cemetery. Harrisburg and Lancaster,
Wow.
Harrisburg and Lancaster were rocking, and they were killing it, but we weren't.
Okay, fair enough, fair enough.
Times have changed, and now we are Poetry Central in the Tri-County area.
What?
We have so many different readings, which some people think is a bad thing because there's too much going on, but actually it's an amazing thing because we can have 3-4 distinct readings that all feed each other. You know, that was inconceivable 10 years ago, let alone 20 years ago.
Oh.
Coming this Monday, February 4th, at Poetry Spoken Here, we'll be bringing in a man by the name of James Arthur, who is a Copper Canyon author. He won a Landon Award, which paid for his book.
Wow.
It's big time. But all that aside, teaches at Princeton, all that aside, he's a hellishly good poet.
Well, now, speaking of education, I know one of the other things, aside from hosting Poetry Spoken Here, which we should all be at February 4th, would be that you have started teaching as well. So now tell me about that. How is that in terms of connecting with people and reaching out from such a personal art, trying to get people that have a totally different writing style than you to now write with you and for you at your direction?
The key to my approach to teaching about poetry is to teach potential and possibility. So the sort of foundation of what I'm trying to teach is elements of that foundation, and let you figure out, how do you look at the world? How do you use language? What are you comfortable with as subject matter?
Okay.
And as you start to go down through those layers, at some point you figure out what is, quote unquote, the great concern. What are you as a human being really after? What is the living mark that you're going to leave? And for people that show up for poetry, consumerism is not their living mark. They are after something more. And it's something that I can't find for them. Right. It's something that a spiritual teacher can't find for them. It's something that they find on their own through their relationship to poetry, which is what makes it so important.
Okay, so where can people find your classes?
All you have to do is get in touch with York Arts, and they're filthy with me and I'm filthy with them. So
Nice.
They know where to find me, and they contact me if people show up and they're interested. That's the easiest way of doing it.
Now you have a new class arc that starts this coming Sunday,
it
correct?
Does, yes. I'm teaching 4 classes throughout the year, and they're going to be offered sort of in seasonal increments.
Okay.
And so in spring, it'll be a How to Poem Start kind of class. In summer, it'll be a revision class, and then in the fall, it will be a performance class, how to present your work. And it's funny because you think of those things, or you hear me talk about those things, but what's underlying it all is if you get a deeper relationship with how to read your work to people, you get a deeper relationship to it. If you learn how to revise it in your own way, but at a deeper level, you get a deeper relationship. So the class that I'm starting on Sunday, this coming Sunday, February 3rd, is the winter class. And it's going to be about the elements of poetry, which are not what you would expect. We're not going to talk about metrics. We're not going to talk about the usual stuff. We're going to talk about what you as a human being interact with when you interact with poetry.
Wow.
So one of the things that I'm really excited about doing is a poet walk. Going out and looking around town as a poet. What do you see? Why do you see it? How does that interact with what you don't see?
Having people's viewpoint as a poet and an artist be totally different from the things that they might normally just gloss right over, walking through as a shopper or a consumer.
And it's totally taken out of what's right and wrong. Oh, I'm a poet. I should be looking at the creek.
The pretty flowers.
Yes, exactly. No, it's not that. It's not that at all. What do you respond to? But that's something people have to learn how to do. We've lost touch with that. And that's something that I feel that I can offer to people. Opening up that inner eye, opening up that inner ear. And then as the cycle of classes goes on, you sort of learn to move with that. And at the end of it, my ambition is that you will have a stronger reinforcement with how you interact with poetry. And you have full ownership of it. I don't know everything. I know a lot about poetry, but I only know a lot about the tradition that I study. But I've been doing it for close to 30 years now, so I have an idea of how to move with poetry that I think I can offer to people as a form of what is possible for you.
I don't know about you, but I was definitely inspired by getting to hear the music of these seeds, seeing the incredible art from Christine DeJuliis, and getting to hear the poetry of Keith Baughman. Now, all of these people are actively involved in the arts community in your hometown. So please make sure to check us out on White Rose Community Television, WRCT.TV, or the White Rose Community TV channel on YouTube so that you can see full episodes as they come out. You can also find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Culture in Maine, or follow us on Twitter at Culture in Maine to hear about our latest guests, to hear about upcoming shows, and if you want to send us videos of yourself or your favorite performers, we can even play them right here on TV. So thank you for joining us for this first sneak peek debut episode of Culture in Maine, and we will see you right back here again next week, Wednesdays at 7 p.m. on Channel 18, WRCT.